Testing. Okay, that looks good. Hey, it's me again. Why do Halo fans constantly talk about something called Spartan Ops? So let's go back in time and let me tell you what Spartan Ops was, and then what its legacy turned out to be. But first, one more time into the breach. It's time to pay the bills. Is that good? Yeah? I'm extremely fortunate to have partnered with Apex Gaming PCs to create a custom line of late-night gaming themed PCs. The PCs have been pre-built, which means it's easier for you to get your gaming on once yours arrives. They come in 3 tiers: Marine, ODST, and Spartan. Each tier of PC is designed to run modern games, and they're built for different budgets people have. Best part is due to the modular nature of PCs, if you buy yourself a Marine tier PC, later on, if you want a bit of a boost, you can just buy some upgrades for it. Recently, Halo MCC released its Steam Workshop, which means modding is now easier than ever. And if you want to get into modding, now is a pretty good time. If you use my coupon code, LateNight, with the link down below, you can get a pretty snazzy discount on your new PC. And once you do get one, I'd be curious to hear what your first mod for the MCC is going to be. A huge thank you to Apex Gaming PCs for sponsoring the video, and let's get back to the topic. So typically with Bungie titles, you usually had campaign, multiplayer, and forge. Well, what happened with ODST was Bungie introduced a new thing, which was player versus enemy game modes in the form of Firefight, and then come Halo Reach, you had forge, campaign, multiplayer, and Firefight. So if the multiplayer grind wasn't your thing, or you were tired of replaying missions over and over in the campaign, you could just throw yourself into the Firefight meat grinder, and it was a ton of fun. It was a great way to blow off steam and just experience the raw Halo PvE gameplay loop. Well, Halo 4 comes out in 2012, and new developer 343, they have a new idea. Instead of Firefight, they want to introduce a PvE game mode that has a narrative hook behind it. So it's sort of the appeal of campaign in that you're doing this for a purpose, but it's got, in theory, the variety and the replay value of something like Firefight. It was this episodic pack of pretty low budget missions, and the reason that they were low budget is because there were a lot of them. So the game launched with 5 Spartan Ops episodes, and each episode had 5 different missions in it. You had 25 missions out of the gate, and each one had to be fun to play. Now the problem with game development is that game developers are not gods. They need to spend a lot of time and care creating this stuff, and if you're making 25 missions, and you're already operating on a lower budget than the campaign team, something's gonna give. So these missions, they were kind of low budget, they reused a lot of assets, you could tell that they were not nearly as polished as some of the campaign stuff, but holy moly, there were 25 of them. And each of these 5 mission episodes came with their own beautifully animated cutscene by Axis Studios, who you probably know is animating the CGI cutscenes in Halo Infinite.
I keep telling you people I don't speak Singhalese.
Progress.
I've got to have better equipment. More materials. You're giving me 2 sticks to rub together here, technologically speaking.
The CGI episodes were awesome. You can find compilations of them on YouTube. They were really cool, they were really well acted, they advanced the universe forward, and so it kind of did feel like this Spartan Ops mode had an importance to it. And on top of that, you played Spartan Ops, not as a pre-made character, but as your own character from the multiplayer mode, which tied into this whole initiative 343 had for Halo 4, which was the multiplayer portion of Halo 4 was the Infinity Suite. The idea is you come on board this new UNSC ship, the Infinity, and you can go fight other Spartans in the war games, canonizing the multiplayer component. You know, that's the logic behind why you're just like running around playing Slayer matches. It's because you're training against other Spartans on board this massive ship in giant holodeck type things. The Forge mode, yup, that's also part of the Infinity. It's part of their simulation, whatever, who cares. And the Spartan Ops mode, the logic being that, well, when you're not training against other Spartans, you're taking your own personal Spartan out onto the field and hunting down remnants of the Covenant. And it has its own story behind it. And all of these different things contribute to your level in multiplayer. So yeah, if you didn't want to play multiplayer, you could play Spartan Ops and you'd rank up, you'd unlock new things, you'd do commendations, challenges and stuff. And because it's all connected, the loadouts were, of course, in Spartan Ops. So whatever you unlocked, you could take into Spartan Ops. And in theory, it might add some replay value because you could replay previous Spartan Ops missions with new guns or new perks. So okay, that's the gist of the mode. Like, it sounds kind of cool, right? It didn't exactly play out the way the developers were probably hoping, but it did have a bit of a cult following that has grown to only appreciate it more over the years. Spartan Ops, I don't think I can confidently say was a very good game mode. I think a lot of the resources that went into it could have been put to better use in other areas of Halo 4, but the Spartan Ops that we got, I still had a lot of fun with. One of the reasons that Spartan Ops was actually quite a bit of fun is when Halo 4 launched, it was a very different kind of story from what Halo traditionally has. 343, they were less interested in the bigger universe of Halo, and they were way more interested in narrowing the scope on the struggles of individual characters. So Halo 4, its story didn't feel as bombastic as previous Bungie titles. It didn't feel like it was advancing the universe in a big, expansive way. It felt more like it was just advancing individual characters. So it left a lot of people lacking, you know, like where's the big scarab battle? Where's the huge galactic threats and the bombastic music and all the awesome action set pieces Halo campaigns usually have? Well, you could find that in Spartan Ops. Spartan Ops' story was a lot less introspective, a lot less character-driven, and it was, well, a lot more adventurous and action-heavy. So if you played Halo 4's story back in the day and you felt kind of like, that didn't really feel like a Halo campaign, well, try out Spartan Ops and you'll probably get something that's a lot more fun and energizing. And it also helps that it was so heavily co-op focused that if you didn't have any friends to play it with, it actually had online matchmaking. So you could match up with other players, and of course you could run with them. Then after the match was over, if you really liked them, you could party up, go into private games and advance the Spartan Ops story even more on your own time. And then what was really nice about Spartan Ops, and in a lot of ways in hindsight, it was almost like 343 was many years ahead of their time. They actually released free DLC Spartan Ops episodes that continued the story. It was kind of almost this like proto-live service narrative before that even became a thing in the gaming industry. And so already Spartan Ops, it was advancing the Halo universe in this big way. It was focusing more on how the galaxy is moving on after the events of Halo 4's story. And then, just a couple of months after Halo 4 release, 343 adds more episodes. So if you were a big fan of Halo's story at the time and Spartan Ops was very engaging for you, this was like a map pack. You know, the multiplayer guys, they love when new maps drop for their favorite multiplayer games, right? It's new content to play. Well, story guys, they're kind of left in the dust a little bit because multiplayer is multiplayer. It doesn't have a story. Or if it does have a story, it's just not good. But this was story DLC, and it was fun, and it was exciting, and it was energizing. So even though the mode didn't actually retain its own player base and it actually wasn't that successful in the grand scheme of things, within the Halo narrative community, Spartan Ops was this incredible time to be a Halo fan because it was constantly giving new stuff, new tidbits about the Halo universe, new things to theorize about. When the new DLC episodes for Spartan Ops released, they breathed new life into discussions about where the story could be going. This wasn't like a lazy waypoint post or a little tiny text blurb when you pop up the game. This was a fun, interactive way to experience the Halo universe advancing. But I've said many times now that Spartan Ops was not ultimately successful, and let's talk about why it wasn't successful. So unfortunately, Spartan Ops, it's become a bit of a punching bag within the Halo community. 343 promised that there was a reason they weren't bringing back Firefight, because Spartan Ops, this was it. This is what it was all about. And it was not what it was all about, and a lot of people just wanted Firefight back. So the story of Spartan Ops was definitely compelling. It was a lot of fun to see where it was going. It was very energizing, but the act of playing Spartan Ops was a different story. Listen, there were 25 missions that you had to play through, and then with the DLC, it bumped it up to something like 50 missions. That's a lot of stuff for a relatively understaffed and under-resourced sect of developers at 343. With Halo 4's main campaign, they just barely got 8 missions out the door with that. And so when you look at Spartan Ops, it feels almost like a game of spot the cost-cutting measure, if you know what I mean. It was mostly all multiplayer or campaign environments, and that's not necessarily bad or anything. You know, if you look at something like Modern Warfare 2 Spec Ops mode, that put reusing assets to great effect, and it made something that was very addictive and replayable. Spartan Ops, though, was not very addictive and not very replayable. And because it wasn't like a single player mission, you weren't actually progressing to an endpoint. You were more or less just running circles around the same small area, killing enemies over and over and over again. And then that brings us to the actual act of playing it, which the AI combat just wasn't very good in Spartan Ops. Listen, Halo 4's AI combat, it's definitely not as refined as the Bungie era Halos, but it was pretty good in the campaign. Like, it was definitely passable, and it was a really good, fun time. In Spartan Ops, though, with the lack of staff, the lack of resources, the amount of missions that they had to do, you could definitely feel that each individual encounter in Spartan Ops was not refined and play-tested as much as it could have been. More often than not, it just felt kind of like throwing any enemy it could at you in huge, great numbers, and combat would be less of this organic, fun, well-designed, fluid combat dance that Halo is known for, and it was just a shooting gallery of targets, so many, and it would just devolve into you just, centering the screen and pressing the button over and over and over again until all the targets were gone. It wasn't very compelling, it was very boring, and you could sleepwalk through most of the combat zones. I think it says something about Spartan Ops' quality that out of all 50 missions, the good Spartan Ops missions, I could count on like one hand. Maybe I could throw another 2 or so on the next hand. And even those had their own clunker moments of just hurry up, why is this taking so long? And then I think the biggest problem with the Spartan Ops mode, probably the key design flaw with it, is they didn't include a fail state. So you could die over and over again in Spartan Ops, and no consequence would happen, so there were ultimately no stakes. If you wanted to play a Spartan Ops mission in Legendary, this wasn't like the 3-star ranks on Modern Warfare 2, where those were really hard Spec Ops missions. Legendary Spartan Ops, it was just kind of like throw your body at the enemies until there are no more enemies. There's no penalty for dying, there's no time limit or anything, you can take as long as you want, and it's pretty boring. So ultimately, there was this kind of it would create this disconnect as you kept playing Spartan Ops where you'd just be dying over and over again trying to complete this stupid mission on Legendary. There's way too many elite generals because, the combat encounters were not well designed because of how many had to be made to fill out the mission list that these poor developers were setting for themselves. And it just, at least for me, it gave me this vibe of, why am I playing this? This is bad. I'm not having fun here. I can clearly see the design limitations. I'd rather be playing Firefight that felt more like it had a lot of love, care, and resources put into it. And unfortunately, in the aftermath of Spartan Ops, 343 looked at the player count and they deemed that it was not something they wanted to do anymore. Spartan Ops was not a successful experiment. They tried something ambitious, God bless them, but the execution was not there, and Spartan Ops was a failure. And 343, they're a very experimental studio. But the problem with their experiments is almost all of their experiments, they usually don't put the resources and time and talent into it. So usually these experiments, they come out and they've got a lot of flaws, a lot of issues. And rather than working on them and refining them, they just abandon the experiment and then move on to something else where they repeat the exact same problem. Unfortunately, Spartan Ops and its very experimental narrative seasonal thing that was going on, it was a one-and-done thing for 343. They threw it in the trash, moved on from it, and the rest of the industry actually started doing stuff similar, and now if you look at something like what Destiny is doing with its seasonal narratives, it's almost exactly what Spartan Ops was doing back in 2012. So why is Spartan Ops a thing that's being discussed right now by the Halo community? Well, it's because 343, they're trying to do a seasonal narrative thing. Listen, they're looking at your Destiny type games, and they want a seasonal narrative to keep people playing. But currently, the way that they're doing it is just not that compelling. They're trying to make this it's this weird academy story it's not very good, it's not going anywhere interesting, and it's just kind of boring, and ultimately at the end of the day, it's just, here's a cutscene where a guy congratulates you on your good work and then goes and tells you to play more multiplayer. So the discussion from the community is that if 343 wants to do their live service narrative instead of this weird multiplayer academy thing, what they could bring back, what they maybe should bring back, is Spartan Ops. Progress. A Spartan Ops 2.0 that's reinvented for the new Halo generation. And that's actually something that I agree with as well. When it comes to Halo Infinite 343, they're very understaffed. They kind of have to focus on one thing at a time, it seems. The resources are stretched thin, you could say. So what I'm thinking is, okay, this Academy story, this seasonal narrative, it's not going anywhere. They're not going to ditch it. How could we continue it in a way that is actually fun and is actually compelling and good? Well, they could kill two birds with one stone by bringing back Spartan Ops, and instead of trying to tie the seasonal narrative into multiplayer, which doesn't really work and doesn't make sense, they could tie it into something that has stakes, like an AI-driven mode, doing missions against the Banished. It would allow Halo Infinite to explore different parts of the Halo galaxy. It would allow players to continue engaging with the AI gameplay loop of Halo Infinite, which is really well received. And hell, if 343 could get AI working in the Forge mode, it would probably actually greatly speed up the process of making something Spartan Ops-like. And what I'm also thinking is that there are still people at 343 that were there in the trenches during the Halo 4 days. You got folks like David Ellis, who actually worked on the Spartan Ops mode. He's still at 343. And I'm sure that folks like David Ellis had a decade to think about what went wrong with Spartan Ops and what they could fix if they could have a do-over. Maybe explore some of those ideas, see if a Spartan Ops revival is possible. And honestly, right now, with the state that Halo Infinite is in, Halo Infinite's not growing. You know, it's only shrinking every day. As time goes on, really the only people left playing Halo Infinite are Halo fans who are going to play the game regardless, not really the general gaming audience. You know, they're all playing Modern Warfare, they're playing Apex Legends and Fortnite and stuff. So if you want to ensure that you don't also lose the Halo fans, maybe give them an excuse to blow up some Banished in a way that isn't just replaying the campaign over and over again. If it's not going to be Firefight, then maybe give a narrative to it. Maybe bring back Spartan Ops. So anyways, that's the discussion about Spartan Ops. That's what it was back in 2012, and that's why people are talking about it right now in regards to Halo Infinite. Hopefully that was very insightful to you guys, and thank you to the Patreon members, whose names should be appearing right up there. And of course, the channel members who keep the channel keeping on, they're going to appear down there. And then, as for me, I'm going to run.
You scared me.
Is that a good way to end the video? Is that a good way to end the video?
Really funny.
Yeah?
Oh my god, you legit scared
Yeah?
me.